Welcome to the Equinety Podcast, where horse owners just like you share their incredible Equinety stories and how Equinety is changing their horses' lives. Whether you're searching for something to give your performance horse better focus, faster recovery, and more stamina, or in the extreme case where all hope seems lost, give your horse what it needs to help heal at a cellular level, you'll find it here. So jump in on today's episode to hear how Equinety is helping horses worldwide. Now, welcome your host, John Dowdy.
Hello and welcome to another Equinety Podcast. We are going to the land down under and talking with our guest this week, Tanya Gibson, who is splits her time in between Tennessee, her home here in the States, and back home in Australia. So without further ado, Tanya, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm excited to talk to you about how my journey has been with your product Equinety, for sure.
Well, that's great, and we're excited to have you. And I know we're going to get a little bit into your background, but this podcast is going to be based around something a lot of people have questions about, which is EPM. And you have one of your good horses that has kind of battled that through the years. And also in your sport of reining, there's a lot of lameness issues and all kinds of things there to keep those horses healthy because it's a pretty demanding sport. But before we get into that, why don't you just spend a little bit of time and tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in the horse industry, and where you are now.
Okay, too easy. I'll make it as short and sweet as I can. I grew up in central Queensland in Australia, which is in the cattle country. My dad was on cattle stations, and then we got into the coal mining industry. Always had horses. My dad always broke in for people, stuff like that. Mainly, we did cow work more than anything. Camp drafting is a big sport back home. So I grew up in that field. When I left school at 15, I went on a cattle property. So hence I camp drafted for ages. Had my kids, got married, kept in the camp draft world, done a bit of barrel racing, that sort of thing. And then eventually we too got into the coal mining industry, bought a property, and I did actually start to see reining probably in the early or mid-90s rather. And then by the late 90s, early 2000s, I looked a little bit more at the AQHA reining. We didn't have a lot of reining in our area. So I stepped out of the camp draft world into the Western performance world, I guess you could say. And from there, ended up in the reining, travelled 11 hours 4 times a year to go to major shows. And from there, ended up training probably in 2007. Moved to the States in 2013 to further, my education in the reining, being that, over here is way, way bigger than over home. And then from Waitsboro, moved to Tennessee, where I'd met my husband of now, and have been here ever since, pretty much. And, I've split my time up between going home and I still have, coaching and training things back home, probably more so over home than here. It's just a little hard to get into when you're not really anybody. It's a big industry over here, but I'm learning heaps, and that's the main thing. So
Sure.
That's sort of about me. Yeah.
So you put on a lot of clinics and travel back and forth back home to Australia.
Yes.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. When I go home for 4 weeks, it's pretty much my feet hit the ground from that plane, and I start work until I leave. Yeah.
Holy smokes! And that's for those who have never flown to Australia from the middle America of Tennessee, how long of a journey is that?
Usually, by the time you get in the car, get to where you're going to start, and then get back to Australia and get in a car and go home from there, it's probably anywhere between 20 to 23 hours, I guess, by the time you go from shower to shower.
So
yeah.
make sure your stamina is up to par before you take that little journey. Huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like I said, getting over there is okay. It's usually the longer I stay over there, the more it kicks my butt when I come back here. For some reason. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Right. Well, and speaking of that, you just got back here about a week or so ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, about last Wednesday night. Yep.
All right.
Sure.
Well,
had 6 weeks back home and was great.
Good. Well, you sound pretty refreshed right now on this recording.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now you're big into the reining world. Do a lot of coaching and clinics, and so let's jump right into this one particular horse that was dealing. You had been dealing with EPM, which is a big issue. Tell us a little bit about EPM and how that affects a horse.
Well, for me, when I first found out that she had it, I didn't even know what it was. I had no idea at all. I mean, at first I was, he said, the gentleman, my farrier, actually picked up on it, and I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And he's like, oh, it's Possum's disease. I said, I still don't even know what you're talking about. So, but what it does, or what it did to my mare, is it the neurological. I can't even say the word very well.
That's pretty good, though. You did good.
I usually say it very, very terribly.
You just say it super fast and keep right on going, and people are like,
exactly. That's
yes.
what I was hoping I could get away with. So it kind of hit all of that. I'm not going to try and say it again now. On her right-hand side, and I had really no idea, simply because I've always had a few issues with her to the right, whether it be, she would just get she would drop a hip to the left a lot, to the right, and I had to get chiropractic work done to her, especially when I was stopping a lot and stuff like that. So when she first started showing signs of being, I'm going to say, bitchy to the right, lifting her head up, wouldn't stay in collection, wouldn't slow down without having a hissy fit, I had no idea. So I got pretty cranky with her, and I'd ride her longer and try and fix things. And then when I really noticed it worse was I was doing stops one day, and that's her really good forte. And she almost flipped over on me. She sort of went into the stop and then just about flipped right over backwards on me. She just lost her balance. And I was like, man, something's not right. Then the weight loss. Like, she was deteriorating away to nothing. And she was on phenomenal amount of feed, and then I upped her feed more. And at the time then, did not know anything about Equinety, wasn't using it, was on different oils, which was something I don't try a lot of supplements, but being that I was in the Reining community and a lot of people use this particular oil, so I was using it. And anyway, nothing was working. And I went over to my farrier, and, he did these few little tests on her, and he said, Tanya, I think she has this EPM. And then once he explained it to me, I said, oh, hell yeah, she's doing all of that. So we did a little video on her, and did her video to a vet in Houston who deals a lot with that. And he come back and said, absolutely. He said, without me even coming to a visit, which he goes up to Bob and Marnie's place quite a bit, 3 times a year, I believe.
Sure.
He said, definitely, we need to get this sorted. And so she went on a month program of whatever, I can't even think of the name, mate, that they have, what the stuff is, but it's 10 mils over the tongue for like 28, 31 days. And she is on that once a year, every year since she's had EPM, just to make sure that, she doesn't, actually as a precaution now.
Sure.
But it was not long after that when my farrier suggested he was using Equinety. So he has suggested, try this, and I honestly haven't looked back. She hasn't looked back. I mean, she looked good, so, but I was still having a chiropractor.
So from the time that things were going wrong, and then she was diagnosed with EPM, it was 2 or 3 months in that time frame.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And then you learned about the Equinety.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and then so tell us. So you started giving her Equinety, which, and as you mentioned, you're not a huge supplement fan, but you took this as a recommendation from Bob, your farrier. So
exactly.
Okay, so then how's your horse doing now? That's full blown EPM.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have not had an issue with her with EPM, full stop, like not at all. And it's been, like I said, I feel it's been probably 2 years. So she's been on Equinety probably 18, 19, 20 months, something like that. Mm-hmm. A good year and a half anyway. But no signs of, like I said, even before the EPM, we had a few lameness issues, a little bit in her breeding and stuff, with having to go to chiropractor and stuff like that. Have not had to do that, but maybe once, and that was just as a precaution to see whether she needed anything done. And actually, she didn't. It was just basically a waste of money. But anyway, she probably enjoyed the massage. That was about it. But no, and when I first started her on the Equinety, even though she had put a reasonable amount of weight back on, she was back in full work, and she looked, to me, I thought she looks good after having all that trouble with EPM. But man, within the 15 to 20 days of having her on the Equinety, like I said, I didn't think I'd see much of a difference, but there was a huge difference. Like I'd have to say from the inside out more than anything, really, because one, she was not at all needed any extra work with her coat. I mean, that really come out in her coat for sure. Mm-hmm. But even her mindset, she used to not be able to hold stamina very well, especially in the heat up here in Tennessee. But that's gone on in leaps and bounds, and she's not stilty in the front ever anymore. I just think it's just like a wonder powder. I don't know what else to say about it.
Well, a wonder powder. Well, I tell people it's not a miracle supplement, but it sure does some miraculous things. And,
absolutely.
And I think it's important too. I mean, people, when they first learn about the Equinety and they start doing their initial research and they start reading these reviews, it sounds like, oh my gosh, this stuff is amazing. But then the more you read about it, you're like, okay, well now this sounds too good to be true. There's no way that it can do all this stuff. And, we're blessed. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But, one of the reasons why this product works in so many ways is because ultimately what it's doing is it stimulates the pituitary gland to release the necessary hormones, and then the body makes the determinations of where to send those hormones for the healing. So it's customizing to the horse, and whether it be with an EPM horse, whether it be a horse that needs stronger and healthier hooves or top line, we get into the next topic here, which is, in the sport of reining, which is really hard on these horses. It helps really well with lameness issues and a recovery standpoint. So tell us a little bit about what you experienced prior to using Equinety in the sport of reining, and then what kind of difference you've seen just by adding the Equinety.
Yeah, well, like I said before EPM, she had been at a few different trainers' places only due to the fact I didn't have anywhere to have her, so I had no choice. And being that I live a couple of hours away and one trainer that had her was 6 hours away, so I really couldn't get up there to see how she was going. They had told me that, she was getting really stilty in the front and lame in the front a lot, and she needed to have x-rays, and basically was told in her 3-year-old year that she had it. Like she was, they might get $2,500 for me, you know. I was like, man, this horse has cost me $40,000 and you're telling me she's worth $2,500.
Yeah.
So that was a real kick in the gut. So I went and picked her up. I rode her at that particular place, and I was so disappointed. I could not believe, you were flat out canter in a circle. She was terrible, And so I had her x-rayed and took her to another training facility closer to me where I could stable her and go ride her myself. And anyway, she had some really bad hoof angles from bad farrowing, and we think that's what contributed to the soreness in the front legs for sure. But that sort of stayed with her a little bit, right up until after the EPM. And then, having had her on the Equinety, and that stiltiness has never come back. So I'm going to say that I believe has helped with that prior problem that she had due to the hardness of reining. I mean, we expect a lot of them reining horses. And, she will always, like I said, drop that right hip from stopping hard. She's a really hard stopper. And for me to be able to do all that now and she not need extra vet bills or extra chiropractic deals, and all I've got her on is the Equinety. I mean, what I basically have her on is she's paddocked. She's not in a stable any longer, hasn't been for since I've had her on Equinety, actually. So she's in a paddock. She has a round bale. And, obviously now that summer's coming in, there is grass, but it's not, it's Bermuda, but, I mean, nothing, hugely that would keep her completely in great condition. She gets strategy and a scoop of alfalfa Timothy pellets twice a day. That's it. And she just looks amazing. And all through winter, her coat, she hardly even, I mean, she did get a little bit hairy, but mainly just her head where the rug wasn't, or blanket, whatever you all call it. Mm-hmm. But she was outside in the freezing cold majority of the time. And her coat, everything, I can't talk highly enough about it. Especially in the reining world. I've got clients back home now that have just started the Equinety. I think some of them are going on to their second and third months in it, and they're absolutely loving it. I had one young lady that her horse had actually been out all of last year with a bad stake that she got in her front. I know it was her back leg, sorry, just below the hock.
Mm-hmm.
So she was out for 8 months. So we started her on Equinety in January, and she was back in work by the end of January. Believe it or not, mid-February she staked her chest just before I went over to Australia. She put a sugar, it was 6 inches long, about 2 inches wide. She put a big stake right through her chest.
Ooh.
And we kept her on Equinety. The vet removed it. And he gave her a heap of stuff. And Marnie was like, you know what, I'll give her what he says, but I said, make sure I said, if anything, I said, double the Equinety. I said, just give her 2 scoops of that a day, And we did that. She was riding her in 6 days. And we showed her.
Wow.
We showed her in the Reining pen end of March, early April it was, when we had our big show. So, I mean, for us, we feel that really helped with her ailments in that healing of, that chest and her back leg and stuff like that.
Yes.
Another client just sent me photos the other day. She had a yearling that she cannot put out in the paddock because every time she does, it goes through a fence. I don't know what its problem is, but she has a few. It hurts itself every time she puts her outside. And she thought, well, this is the perfect time. I'll try this Equinety that Tanya gave me. And anyway, so this little mare has been on just grass hay and enough of a mixed feed just to be able to give it the Equinety. And, man, what a hell of a difference. And this is just a yearling, and she's healed up. All her ailments are good at the moment, so I don't know if she's let her out of it yet. But yeah, and just heaps of, I've probably got nearly 20 clients over home that are using it, so they're really excited. I've had reorders just come in this week from ladies that have just been using it for a month and have reordered the big tub now. So
that's
I'm
great.
excited.
It is.
Yeah.
It is exciting, and again, I tell people it's not a miracle supplement, but it sure does some miraculous things. And it's always encouraged when you have an issue going on with your horse to please make sure that you you did what you did. You went through your vet and do the proper things there. But adding the Equinety, one of the other great things about it, there's no negative side effects with any medications or other supplements or feeds or anything. It's 100% pure amino acids, the building blocks of protein. And so this is really, really great. And I know there's a lot of people that's going to benefit from listening to this podcast for the EPM story. I mean, that's pretty amazing. We hear these stories all the time, and I'm so happy to be able to get this one up and published.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, this mare, they said to me that she would be out for at least 8 to 12 months of the Reining pen after EPM, in all seriousness, 4 months. And I had her back in the Reining pen when she was on, and she'd only been back on the Equinety she'd only just started the Equinety maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And I had her back in the Reining pen without an ailment.
Within 2 months?
Yep, of starting the Equinety. Yep.
And it was supposed to be 12 months?
Yep.
I don't know.
And I mean, I was very fortunate. I mean, she had, there's different severities of the EPM. I mean, like I said, she was wobbly when I rode her. It wasn't as visible when you looked at her walk in the paddock. I mean, it was a little bit, but some horses that get it, I think I was very fortunate that my farrier picked up on it as early as what he did.
Sure.
But she, like I said, she had wasted away, like her muscling. I should have took photos. I never ever thought. I was too embarrassed because I'm thinking, my God, people are going to think I'm not feeding my horse,
Right.
And at the place where I had her, the lady was like, because I have a shade cloth rug on, which is like a mesh rug, what you would call a mesh rug.
Yes.
And yeah, we do get humidity and stuff here. And she was telling me that she thought it was my fault that my horse was losing weight because I had this mesh rug on. And I said, no. I said, I live in 110 to 120 degree weather in Australia. I have these rugs on, and mainly they're for, to stop the sun bleaching and stuff like that, and the flies and that. I said, there's no way this is causing her to waste away like she is. Like, it's impossible.
Right.
And all this time it was just the EPM. But, yeah, I kid you not. She was back in – I took her to her first major derby, and and that would have been in the May at the end of May in Ohio. So we had the EPM, was diagnosed with the EPM in January, like full blown. And then we started the Equinety. Might have been December, but I know it wasn't much longer. Like I was probably 6 to 7 months back in the pen earlier than what the vet thought I would be.
Wow, that's astounding.
So I was, exactly, and that's one of the reasons I, asked you about taking it to Australia. Is I wouldn't be trying to push it if the stuff didn't work or do what I think it's doing. So
sure,
I love it. Like,
what's the demeanor of the horse now? How are the eyes? I mean, I would assume happy and yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, she's your typical blue-eyed. She's a gunner special night, so she thinks she's kind of special as it is. She's out of a smart Chickalina mare, so she's got a bit of sass there. And she's like any other typical mare. I call her sweet and sour. Sometimes she's as sweet as ever, and other times she's just a sour bitch. But she's with her whole demeanour since I've had her on that, she's a lot happier. And I also believe too what probably helped with that is not being stabled so much.
Sure.
It's a shame. Like over here, you stable a lot, and I understand that you have weather, and these horses are in. You've got $200,000 horses that they don't want to put in a paddock. But I just always feel paddock horses, if you can, are a lot more happier as well. So, all in general, she's even when I go to a show, she's a lot better to handle and stuff. She used to get a little, I guess, stressed or anxious at shows, and she's been a lot better. At most of my shows now that I've taken her to last year and stuff like that. And at the moment, actually, she's just got AI'd, so she should be about, 2 to 3 weeks in foal now. So she'll stay on Equinety all through that as well. So
right,
I'm
which
not going to take off it.
No, and we get that question a lot too. Is it safe for pregnant mares? It absolutely is. So it's a great all around product. So. Yeah. Well, absolutely. Tanya, I can't thank you enough for coming onto the show and sharing this story. I know a lot of people are going to get great benefit from it, so thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's been great. Thank you. Very good.
Awesome. Well, keep us updated with everything.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
That's all for this episode of the Equinety Podcast. For more information on purchasing Equinety, be sure to visit our website at teamequinety.com, where you'll also find product information as well as more testimonials on how others have seen amazing results by implementing Equinety into their horse's supplement regime. We'll have more stories on how Equinety is helping horses worldwide right here on a future episode of the Equinety Podcast.